So this next part of the video is a little bit of an advanced topic, but because adding breedable pets is kind of an advanced feature, we're going to have to go over it. If we look into our tables, let's look at producer states table. A producer is a thing like a plant. It's a thing that changes visuals over time and then produces an output. And the producer states table is where the art for a producer is specified. Okay, and we're using these as examples just because I know there's very clear differences between these two tables. But what I'm saying now applies to some other types of tables. So to make farming simpler the first time you use it and you're looking at tables, we took some columns out that were optional. But you can still know what those columns are by either starting from an empty table in your project or from just looking at the empty tables to see the naming patterns. So let's just look at farming. I've already added some extra columns into this one because, like I said, I did a practice run of this video. So that's why I know I needed to do this. But let's just take this as an example. Say that I want my plant to rebuild. An apple tree is an example of a plant that might need to rebuild, right? You harvest it once after it's grown up, and then it doesn't grow up again. It's already big, but the fruit grows back. And so we use a second set of art states for just the fruit growing back, and that's the rebuilding state. So rebuilding state 1 is the first art that would show, then rebuilding state 2, then rebuilding state 3, etc. But the second part of that name is actually referring to what type of template should be loaded up. And you can have different kinds of templates in our framework. The most common ones you're going to see are static. Now, a static template is generally art that needs collision, and it might have a folder in it for client assets. So it might have a folder inside of it that has like some detailed art. That's a client context folder or group. I should have said group. So anything you put into that client context one won't have collision, but anything that's not inside that client context would just have collision. And that would be what you would expect to see in a static folder. So it's either going to be just art you can walk into, so art with collision, or it might optionally also have some decorative client assets in it. You can also have ones that say server here. I don't think we're actually using that anywhere in the framework, but some scripts would require you to put them in a server context. And then the other one is just a straight client context template. And that template, you don't have to put it in a client context yourself, because anything put in one of these columns where it says client at the end will spawn into a client context by itself. I know that's all kind of confusing, and if you haven't been using contexts yet, you're best off just sort of copying what I've done in the farming and copy what I tell you to do in the videos, until you sort of get the hang of it and understand what to expect. What I want to show you here is what to do if there's not enough fields here. So we only left the static columns into the producer states tables. We took out the server ones and we took out the client context ones. So I've started adding some of the client context ones back into this because I needed them for the Foxhome. So let me show you how I do that. So you see that for rebuilding state 1, I already added a client here, but rebuilding state 2, there's no client context. So let's just add one of those. We're going to insert the column to the left, and then it'll have this little symbol next to it because it doesn't know what type it is, and it has no name yet because we haven't named it. So if you click on that little button, it opens that little symbol. It'll open up this thing where you can give it a name and you can give it a type. So we go rebuilding state 2 underscore, but instead of writing static like the one that's already there, we're going to write client. And the type for these ones is an asset reference. You can know the type by hovering over them. They'll tell you. See, these all say asset reference. An asset reference is obviously where you can like drag in an asset, like something that you've made. In our case, this is a template from your project content. The reason I'm adding these client states is because we have some scripts in the farming framework that really want to be specifically in here. So they don't want to be in a client folder inside of a static. They want to be in their own client template. And because of that, we sometimes need these columns if we're going to use those advanced functions. We'll just add one here one more time so you can see what I do. Again, so I'm trying to add the client column to match with the static one. If I go insert column left, click on this little button, and I go rebuilding state 3 underscore client, and I make it an asset reference. If you spell these wrong, or you put it as the wrong type, like you don't select this correctly, or if you spell this wrong, not how it's, then it's not going to work. It has to be, you know, our code is looking for this very specific thing. So there you go. That's how you add new ones. Now, the other reason that this is good information to know, right now we only give you 3 building states and 3 rebuilding states, but what if you want to make a house and you want it to have 20 states as it builds? You can. You can actually go up to 32. You just do the same thing. You would add a new column and you would name it building state 4 underscore static or client if that's it's client art you're adding. And you just keep following the same pattern and our code will know what to do with that. So the reason that I brought up the empty states table is you can see some of the extra states that you're allowed to use if you just open this. So if you open this one, you'll see at the top, there's no data filled out because it's an empty table. But you can see it has place state client, place state static, place state server. And it's like that for all of them. So it actually has 3 columns for each art state that you can have. So this sort of tells you that you're allowed those fields and that those fields will work. And if you follow the pattern, of course, as I said before, you can have more than 3 building states and more than 3 rebuilding states. You can also copy these and paste them. That's another option. I think the last thing to call out is that sometimes the example I've given you here is the one relevant to what we're doing right now, which is the producer states. In the case of, say, the gatherables table, so let's open up empty and let's open up farm. Again, we took out some optional columns. Tools consumed per gather might actually not be in here by default. I think I might have added that one in an earlier tutorial video. I honestly can't remember which ones we pulled out, but basically there's sometimes extra fields here that are not in the one that we're actually using in farming, and you can copy and paste them or you can just manually add them as long as the type and ID match. Okay, so I'm sorry if that was confusing, but the main reason I'm explaining this to you now is so that in the next video, or one of the next couple of videos, if you see extra columns that you don't have, you understand how I got them and why they're there, and you can add them to your own project if you need them.